Hey, hi there, everyone. Welcome to week 7 of the Leadership Alliance Professional Development Workshop Series. My name is Dr. Taiese Bingham-Hickman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Leadership Alliance, and I will be moderating today's event. This event is a component of the Leadership Alliance Virtual Professional Development Workshop Series. The Leadership Alliance Executive Office and its partners created this initiative to ensure continuity of skill building, networking, and exposure to graduate programs for undergraduate and graduate students from across the country. Paired with our Wednesday evening workshops, we hope to expose you to a discussion of critical issues, allow you to network with each other and our wonderful doctoral scholars, as well as develop learning approaches and skills for navigating your research careers. Today, I am pleased to introduce doctoral scholar, Dr. Chinonye Nnakwe Whitley. Dr. Whitley is a molecular biologist, and her studies of DNA repair and DNA damage signaling pathways offer insights into the molecular biology of neuroscience, immunology, and cancer biology. Dr. Whitley obtained her Bachelor's of Science in Biochemistry with Departmental Distinction from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and her PhD in Pathology from the University of Chicago. Dr. Whitley joined the NSF's Office of Integrative Activities in September 2017 and serves as a program officer for the NSF Established Program to stimulate competitive research. She currently manages a $100 million portfolio of standard grants and cooperative agreements that focus on building basic science research infrastructure, promoting economic development, and broadening participation in STEM. Prior to her current role, Dr. Whitley was a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the NSF in Computer Information Science and Engineering Directorate, where she worked on innovation policy programs such as I-Corps, CIBER, and STTR. After obtaining her doctoral degree, Dr. Whitley was a management consultant for the healthcare consulting company Campbell Alliance, now Inventive, where she facilitated product launches and conducted pricing studies of pharmaceutical products. Later, she was appointed the inaugural director of graduate diversity initiatives in the Office of the Provost at the University of Chicago. In this role, she led in-reach and outreach programs to promote diversity and inclusion in higher education and the research workforce. She fostered multi-institutional partnerships that led to initiatives like the Spines Neuroscience Symposium with the Marine Biological Laboratory and the National Research Mentoring Network, Academic Network, with the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So with that, thank you, Dr. Whitley, for joining us today. And I know we have a number of students that are excited to hear from you and your background specifically in the grant writing space. So I'm going to start with just asking you to, I know I just read your bio, but just ask you, what compelled you to go in this direction in terms of your career and how did you arrive at this place? And then we'll drill down into some of the more specific questions.
Okay. Well, Taiese, before I answer that question, I have to thank you for the invitation. And I'm overjoyed to be here and able to share my knowledge. I also have my Doctoral Scholar certificate and, I'm hiding. And sash
Yeah.
right here. So I'm official. And I wanted to make sure that I represent for my colleagues. So the question was what led me to the direction of government or just in general, my career path?
Yep.
So it was a really non-linear path, and you'll find that when you talk to folks about their careers, it's often non-linear, and that just means that life happens and you have your own interests and you have your own exposures. So at a very young age, I really loved everything, and when I got to my senior year of high school, I had to declare a major, and I couldn't because I liked everything. And so I entered University of Illinois as a general major. That means I had no major and I had to take all types of course electives and figure it out. And at the time I was considering child development because I really like working with kids. I like psychology. And I was also thinking of music therapy because I was really active in playing my clarinet in high school and I continued on to college. And then one day I took this really class with Dr. Esmail Maysami at University of Illinois. It was called Human Physiology. And we had a coloring book that we had to color as part of this class. And it really excited me about the human body and understanding the specifics about the human body down to the molecular level. And I was like, I'm pretty good in AP Bio. Let's go with this. Yeah, pursue this further. And because I got a really good GPA my first year of college, the Ronald E. McNair program sent me a letter and they said, you want to consider graduate school? I was like, graduate school? What's that for? Maybe I could just stay here and work with Dr. Maysami in his lab. And so that's what I did through the Ronald E. McNair program at U of I became a McNair Scholar, and I worked with Dr. Maysami, and I had my first research project where I studied nerve growth factor expression in rat brains. And so I had to, work with rats, fix and harvest brains, slice and stain. And normally most people would be freaked out by any of that, excuse me, but I was so enthralled by it. And then I followed up by taking chemistry and learning about the phospholipid bilayer. And I was like, biology is going to make me have to take botany. So let me focus on biochemistry. That'll be a lot easier, which is actually the opposite. It's actually the harder path. But because it was my passion, I loved it. I loved all my biochemistry classes. I got through physical chemistry, and then I had to take physical biochemistry. And so it was like, wow, this is really cool. So I just followed my passion for learning and learning about myself, learning about the body. And I went on to finish with my bachelor's in biochemistry. And I wanted my science to do good in the world. So I figured, let me go the biomedical path and maybe have a focus on disease. And that's what led me to University of Chicago to pursue a degree in pathology, which is really medicine, molecular medicine. And I chose a topic that had applications in immunology, which I really loved in college, and a topic in cancer, which I also wanted to have an impact on. But as I continued on with graduate school, I realized I wanted to do something different. I wanted to give back. I wanted to have a more direct connection. And so I decided to not stay at the bench and do a postdoc, but go and do something else. And that was working in the corporate sector as a management consultant. And I learned very quickly that when you transition from your lab, the business of science is very different from the day-to-day lab work of science. And so I work with organizations, I work with organizational leaders, CEOs, marketing directors, and really had a great understanding of how a product gets to market and all the different components that have to do that. But I realized that after a year, it was a very different environment, very, very cutthroat. And I didn't want to be in that space anymore. So I transitioned back from doing that and I went into diversity, equity, inclusion work, especially because when I thought back to my graduate days, the most joy I had was when we were recruiting students that were underrepresented to graduate school, and when I was doing outreach with elementary school students and mentoring undergraduates of color at University of Chicago. So I connected with my different mentors and I said, hey, I'm on the market. Here's my CV. I was applying everywhere. And one of my mentors was like, hey, come work for me. Come work at University of Chicago again. And let's try to think about a strategy for attracting amazing students from University of Chicago's graduate programs. And so that became my work for the next 4.5 years. And by the third year, I was thinking, this is getting repetitive. I like this work, but I can't do the same thing every year for the rest of my life. I need to take it up another level. And so I did the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship, which is open to anyone with a PhD at any time in their career. And that took me to doing broadening participation or diversity, equity, inclusion work at a national level and national scale. And so through that, I learned all about innovation and entrepreneurship. And then I combined my background in science and broadening participation to create initiatives with and for the NSF doing that. So when you're a AAAS fellow, you're a contractor. So I was like, this is over in 2 years. What am I going to do? Well, what I loved about NSF is the collegiality, the opportunity to have a big impact. And I found my home with the established program to stimulate competitive research, and that's called EPSCoR. And so that's what I do now as a program officer. I help PIs at institutions that don't receive a lot of NSF funding learn how to navigate that path. I mentor and have a program that supports early and mid-career investigators so that they can build build partnerships with people everywhere, all across the world. I also am working on a new program that's meant to help a state really build some infrastructure to do research in a competitive way, be it acquiring equipment or thinking about how do we bring more jobs to the area, or how do we build up the scientific workforce, because it's very low in our states. And so all kinds of ways to really assist and help some of our nation's institutions be able to engage and impact science in their own way. So I gave you the whole trajectory. I hope that's okay.
No, that's great. And just given your experience, one of our student questions asked specifically, are there any resources or opportunities that you would suggest for underrepresented students or students in general that you wish more people knew about or that they can take advantage of? Oh, I think you went on mute.
Sorry about that. There's so many opportunities at federal agencies. Like NSF, we have a mission to build the scientific workforce, advance the progress of science. You can't advance science without people. So many of our initiatives are there to build up the scientific workforce. So we have a whole host of opportunities that we have at NSF. But NIH also has opportunities through their postbac program. NASA has internships that you can conduct at various stages of your life in your career. And then there's private foundations like the National Academies of Science or UNCF Merck, Howard Hughes. So I think earlier I put in a whole heap of opportunities into the chat. So I'm going to try to copy all those and put them back in the chat. And the first one is our education and training opportunities at NSF. And so that's the first one. But there's a lot of really wonderful opportunities to engage in science at all stages. I even talked about the McNair program. So if you're at a university that has a McNair program, you should go check out that office. There's a lot of resources for going to graduate school, getting a degree, doing research on campus, and all that good stuff.
Thank you. Yes, and we will make sure we post these in the Google Classroom for students so that they can take a look as well. What would you say your favorite aspect of your job is as it currently stands now? And how comfortable or how maybe uncomfortable has it been being flexible in your career path, given that you didn't take a straight path?
So one of the things I love the most is to do the work of a program officer at NSF. And it's very unique because we have the authority to make funding recommendations that, with additional approvals down the line, will be made into awards. And so we manage the the merit review of proposals that investigators send to our agency. So when we receive a proposal, we have to identify experts that align with the topic of the proposal to give us a review. And we have those experts discuss the proposal and then give it a rank. And then we read the proposals as well, and we conduct our own analysis as to whether or not the proposal needs to be funded. So we either make a decision to make an award, to recommend an award, or to recommend that the proposal be declined. And some of the best parts of my work is calling up someone that submitted a proposal and told them that we plan to make a recommendation for an award, because they light up on the phone. They're so thankful because it's so meaningful to their career to have that support. Other aspects are when I'm out in the community conducting outreach to make sure, like I'm here conducting outreach, I'm giving you all information you're gonna leverage to support yourselves and your career aspirations. And so when I'm out in the community, I've talked and I'm able to meet one of the folks that we've made a decision to fund after they've received the funding and after they've done some of the work. And they come up to me and they say, "Thank you so much. Your support means everything to me. Because I was a lecturer, I didn't have a lot of opportunities, and now I've moved on and now I'm an assistant professor at this university." So you actually see the impact of what your recommendations make. And that's one of the funnest parts, seeing that the ability to help people advance in their career and being able to create programs that are going to help people as well.
Thank you. We have a few questions about your time at University of Chicago. One is specific to, what was your day like, your day-to-day? And then another student writes that she was born in Illinois, but she lives in Arizona. She'd like to come back and make an impact in the community. And she was wondering if there are any projects or specific things that you've done that you can share with her that are in place.
Excuse me. So, what's the day-to-day? Well, as a graduate student, every day is different. But what I usually did on Mondays is I had this sheet that I still have to this day. I'm trying to see if I still have one. I have this sheet that I use to map out what my week is going to look like, because at the time I was doing tissue culture, and tissue culture takes, I think, like 5 days that you have to use to set up, right? You have to do general maintenance, but then if you want to do an experiment, you actually have to set your cells up so that they're ready for the treatment that you're going to do. So I had to map out what I do each day. I don't know if this paper is going to show up. I'm here, but nope, it's not going to show up. Okay. I have to show a picture of y'all some other time, but I had to basically map out each day, and then I would do or try to do what I had mapped out. Of course, I would write in pencil and then move things over as needed. But, usually I would start off checking on my cells, work on some cloning projects at my bench, check emails every once in a while, but do my lab work. Sometimes I get to go to journal club, or I would go to lunch with friends. Grad school was really nice. It was fun. Flash forward to University of Chicago as an administrator. Now, no lab work, working with deans of students and deans across the campus, because my position was in the provost office. So that means that I'm working across the university in its various functions, various departments or divisions, to think about how I can assist and support them in their strategy for increasing diversity within their graduate programs. So I may meet with my colleague Nancy Schwartz, who's the Dean for Postdoctoral Affairs in the Biological Sciences Division, or Victoria Prince, who's the Dean for Graduate Studies, and talk to them about, we want to join the GEM Consortium. What do we need to do that? Who do we need to talk to? What applications do we need to write? And we actually did that while I was there, and it was great. I worked across multiple divisions, and we worked on that work. Or I might go and talk to a faculty member and say, hey, I'm running the Leadership Alliance Summer Research Internship Program. If you want to be part of this, this is what it costs. Tell me if you want to be part of it, and I'll include you in the admissions process so you can help select students. I also did event planning. We brought students back across the country who had come and toured our graduate programs. We gave them a second look, but we did it in a way that helped them understand that they're one of many students that are underrepresented in higher ed. And you can look across disciplines and identify colleagues in a community. And those students came for a second look, and then we wanted to leverage that opportunity to help them see that University of Chicago could be a great place for them to pursue graduate study and find community. So we did event planning and things like that. So every day was really different as administrator. There was a significant travel component as well, because I was also traveling to other universities or other conferences to meet graduate candidates where they were at a conference, or going to university, give a talk to students to help them understand the graduate admissions process. So I think I've been to more than 35 to 40 states in the country. There's very few states that I have not been to that I will need to check off my bucket list. But I've been to almost every state. Let's see, Utah, Nevada. Yeah, some of these states. I could go through it, but I've been through quite a few states in my career.
That's impressive. A number of people can't say that. So, yeah. How did you find your job or your career after your PhD? Like, how did you wind up where you are, and what was the impetus for you kind of choosing this particular line of work?
So one of the things I started doing was I had a prolonged graduate program because I switched labs. My first lab I was working in, my mentor did not get tenure, and she had to transition her lab, which meant I had to find a new home to pursue my PhD. So I had PhD training in 2 labs. And by the end of the second lab tour, I was ready to go. Anyone who's a graduate student, who's a PhD candidate, who's been in for about 4 years, they're ready to go. They're ready to transition out and make their next step. And so for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to jumpstart this process. Let me go over to the Career Services Center across campus and take some classes, learn about networking, and learn about building relationships with alumni. And so I started doing informational interviews with alumni. And that's where I learned, like, one of the very first important rules of your professional career and development, that networking is relationship building. And relationship building is a long-term endeavor. It's also not transactional. So it's not like I'm going to make a relationship with you so I can get something out of you. It's I'm going to learn about you. I'm going to understand what you do. I'm going to understand where you're going or where you've gone, and learn from that. And I also have a perspective that you may also want to understand, and we can help each other in the future. And those relationships are things that you build long term, and you really go back and you feed them, like your friendships. They become friendships, they become collaborations, they become ways for you to understand how to be socialized in a new space without being in it. And so I started networking with alumni and asking them. I was considering doing patent examinations. So I talked to patent attorneys about what their life was. I was considering consulting. So I talked to several people who'd gone into consulting. I was considering science and communication. So I talked to like different journalists and things of that nature. So I just started developing the skill of connecting with people, talking to them, asking about their day-to-day, so that I could get a picture of what I liked or didn't like about that. And then I also learned about how to apply for opportunities because they would know me, they would know I'm potentially interested, so they would send me opportunities, and I would apply. And to this day, I really don't apply for jobs or opportunities without talking to someone in the organization first, because I want to make sure that that job is a real job, right? It's not meant for someone who's already in the organization, and I have a better idea of what the folks are looking for and if it's a good fit with what I have to offer. Because I want to use my time very wisely to be in things, to apply for things that are well aligned with my interests and my passions, because that means I'm going to be motivated to do that work. You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
So kind of building on that, is this something that you feel like you've always aspired to do or that you work towards, or do you feel like it's different than what you initially envisioned? As you
Being a
said.
program officer?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. When I first met my first program officer, I was applying for a NIH Ruth Kirstein F-31 pre-doctoral fellowship. And they had one that you could apply for in general, and then they also had a track for students that are underrepresented in STEM disciplines. And I applied for that after having applied for 3 other pre-doctoral fellowships and not being successful, right? So, it was like on my 4th trial, I applied for the Merck, I applied for Ford Foundation, I applied for HHMI, and then I applied for Ruth L. Kirstein. So by the time I had applied for the 4th one, I was really well versed in my writing and I was well practiced. And so I say this to say, if you write a application, a proposal, and you get declined, learn from it, learn from the reviews, and then improve your application. Don't give up. And so when I got a call about the opportunity, and I applied, and then my mentor, my thesis advisor said, call the program officer. And I was like, oh my God, I have to call the program officer? This is NIH. It's so impressive. What am I to say? She's like, ask them about, if the opportunity is a good fit. Ask them about what would make them a strong candidate, right? It's like, so for me, being in graduate school and understanding that I could call a program officer, I was like, the program officer is like up here, and I'm like down here, right? So that to say, when I got my grant, I was at the American Association for Cancer Research, and my program officer, Dr. Nelson Aguila at NIH, saw me and he told me, he's like, we're going to fund you. And it was the greatest opportunity for me. And that was the first engagement with a program officer to see that this is a human person, right? And so after that, I was like, wow, it'd be so cool to work in government. But it wasn't an aspiration that I have always had. I had general aspiration to give back to my community. And that's one way to do it. And so when I went to NSF as a AAA Science and Technology Policy Fellow, my mentor was a program officer, an NSF program officer. Her name is Anita LaSalle. She's retired now, but she's still in the area. And at NSF, I was seeing program officers all over the place. I was working with them. I was helping create programs with them as a fellow. And these people had done some amazing things. Some of these folks were chairs of departments. They had been faculty in academia for X number of years. Now, mind you, I had never had a postdoc, right? My postdoc was in my graduate lab. Then I went to academia as an administrator, and I also worked in industry. So this is, and I was not that profile, right? And as I was talking to her, she said to me, she's like, can be a program officer. And I was like, what? And she's like, yes, professional experience. You've worked with senior leaders. You've had to manage budgets. You do this. And I was like, I could do this. So when I was transitioning out of my fellowship, I applied for program officer jobs. I applied to NIH, I applied to NSF. I got interviewed. And right after my interview, I got a freeze. So 6 months passed and I was applying for another job and I saw another mentor and she was like, yeah, we're going to hire you. I was like, no one has called me. I don't know what you're talking about. And the next day I got an offer to work at NSF as a program officer. So I think for me, it's very easy to see now how one could be a program officer because we have a rotational program for folks in industry or academia. They can get a grant from NSF to be a program officer on loan and then go back to their institution after 3 years. We call that the IPA or Interpersonal Governmental Act. We also bring in folks as visiting scientists, and you can do that as well. But you have to understand that program officers are federal employees, which means we're public servants, which means we are here and being paid by your taxpayer dollars to do our work, right? And our work is to benefit our community, to support our community, to engage with people, to talk to you to help you understand how to be competitive for the opportunities that we manage. And when we talk to you and you get a better understanding, you write a stronger proposal, which is what we want. So it is our job to talk to you. So for me, I think that I'm in the right place right now to do the work I'm doing because I'm able to encourage more people to come into this space, to come into science, given my background as an African-American woman in the US. And I'm also able to give you a perspective that maybe someone else might not be able to give you. So I did want to do it once my mentor encouraged me, but I didn't think I would be able to do it until I got that green light.
Thank you for sharing that. Imposter syndrome, we all struggle with it in some capacity. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the Leadership Alliance and how impactful that experience has been and how it kind of maybe shaped your decision to pursue research further?
Yes. So I have 2 engagements with Leadership Alliance. The first is as an undergraduate. After I had done the McNair Scholars Program, I had decided I'm going to do science as my career. And now I have to do as many research programs as I possibly can. And so after I did work at University of Illinois, I next went to Duke University and did research there with Chris Rates. He's really awesome. And then after that, I went to the conference that was the precursor for ABRCMS, ABRCAMS, and I met folks at the Leadership Alliance. And I was like, oh my God, I can apply for all of these different research programs and I could choose 3. I could apply for 3 at the same time. And so I did. I applied for 3 programs and I got accepted by Johns Hopkins University. And I worked with Paul Worley. We did research on neuroscience and synaptic junctions. It was really cool. And at that time, I had decided I definitely wanted to get a PhD. And I don't know if you guys see from my maiden name, I'm Nigerian American. So I had Nigerian parents that straight up came direct from Nigeria. And so they saw me interested in science and they were like, oh, you're doing an MD. And I was like, wait, what? I just want to study. I just want to do the science. And my parents were like, help so many people back home, right? Back in Nigeria. And this is true. I mean, if you talk to many Nigerian Americans, you can be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, and that's it, right? No, that's not it. You can do a number of things. You can do so many wonderful things with your career, but there's a cultural pressure to excel in these areas because there's just so much need back in Nigeria. And so when I was at Hopkins, I started working on my medical school application because I was going to do an MD PhD program. I was like, okay, the only way I'm going to make this work is if I do 2 degrees. So I started doing that. I started talking to doctors at Hopkins. Now, mind you, this is Johns Hopkins, right? One of the #1 Ivy League schools in the country. So I'm in the right place to be doing this work, okay? And I started showing my personal statement to mentors so they can give me input. And they're like, I see the science, I don't see the medicine. And I was like, okay, more medicine. What do I write about medicine? I don't want to go into medicine. And so I made the decision during that fellowship to just pursue a PhD. And what was instrumental was that I had the support from Leadership Alliance, from the mentors within Leadership Alliance. Dr. James Hildreth was the lead for the program at the time, and he was an MD PhD. I looked up to Dr. Hildreth. We had Kathy Wood, who was, I think she's still working on the program. She was a wonderful mentor, and that was a space where I had the courage to decide, this is the actual path that I want, because I had people around me who were doing that work, and I also had people that were supporting me in the work. And I had to tell my parents later, after taking the MCAT and review, that I wasn't going to medical school. But I further deepened my love for science by working with Dr. Worley and my colleagues around me who were applying for medical school. I got a clear idea of what I really wanted to do, which is to get a PhD in science.
Excellent. And what advice would you give to students who are thinking about doing research, or how they can potentially get started? Some of the students on this webinar are part of the Leadership Alliance and some aren't. So for students that are thinking about this, what would you recommend, or what would you encourage them to do?
So there's 2 ways you could do it. If you're currently enrolled at a university and you're taking science classes, or you're taking any kind of class because I know we go across fields, right? Any class that's interesting, start engaging with your faculty and talk to them about your interest in doing research, and ask, is there anything I can do to get a better understanding of how to do research through what you're doing, or if there's someone that's doing work elsewhere, right? So you can look first at your own institution and you could create your own internship, or you could do a research seminar or a senior thesis and do research at your home institution. Figure out how to fit it into your work during the school year. But then you also have your summers that are available to you and open, right? And so the opportunities that I described, there's so many opportunities to do research over the summer at an institution. You just have to apply. And even if you don't have a great GPA, it may be early in your career, right? And so you start where you can create one. There was a book that I really loved reading when I was finishing up my fellowship with AAAS. It's called Designing Your Life. And it's a design thinking approach to mapping out or understanding how to navigate your thoughts on figuring out where you want to go. And one of the things that was really helpful was to understand that there are certain things that we might believe that are not true, right? That you have to have it all figured out right now, that you have to do what you said you're going to do it because you told somebody else you're doing it, and now you're stuck to that, right? And it gives you the ability to really realize that your life is a journey, and the exposures that you have impact that journey, right? So what ways can we think differently about understanding where do we want to go on that journey? And so that book was really helpful for helping me kind of reframe my thoughts and understand that I can really go wherever I want to go, as long as I navigate, network, gain experiences that are helping me understand if that's what I really want, and then continuing down that path if that's what I want to do. So you can definitely get started by talking to professors at your own institution. If you're a post-baccalaureate student, meaning that you graduated, check out the post-bac programs. Also, think about how to create your own internship, right? Through networking, engaging with your parents, engaging with friends or family, trying to understand if there's people working at a company. Do they have internship programs? More likely they do if they're a Fortune 500 company. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but then there's also formal application, and you read the directions, apply well in advance, connect with the person that's managing the internship or the fellowship so you can understand, like a grant application, what makes you a competitive student, and apply. Even if you're worried that you're not competitive enough, apply anyway. Apply anyway, because you definitely won't get in if you don't apply, right? But if you are trying to be strategic about where you apply, start with your passion first and apply to those areas first.
Thank you. So we have a couple of questions on work-life balance, stress, how you stay motivated. So I'm going to ask you to address, if the best of your ability, how you made it through graduate school and even in your professional life now, like what is your biggest challenge in terms of trying to juggle that
Yeah.
aerial concept of work-life balance?
Yes. Okay. How did I make it through grad school? I already told you I switched labs, right? So that was like not pleasant. And it made things longer. It made it a long road. Along that road, I decided I don't want to run a research lab like I thought I did when I started. So now what do I need to do, right? And what judgment am I going to feel because someone's telling me you were supposed to go this path and you didn't go, and now what are you going to do, right? It was tough. Not only did I have to go through that, graduate school in itself is tough because you are pursuing a degree. It's not finite, so you're not exactly sure if you're getting a PhD when it ends. And when it ends, it's dependent on when you produce enough to contribute to a field of research to say, I produced new knowledge and here it is, right? You wrote your sentence in the book of, science or English or, you know, languages. You wrote, here's my sentence that I added to the knowledge that is in my field. That's your PhD work. Because it can be dependent on the decision of your thesis committee and your thesis advisor, and your relationship with them has different dynamics as you progress through grad school. It can be really tough. It can be really stressful. It can be like a pressure cooker. And I have to say that going through the process of writing my thesis, defending my thesis, submitting it to the library electronically, thank God, right, was stressful, right? So what did I use to get through that? I had such good friends through my graduate cohort, through the cohort ahead of me. I had good friends with folks ahead of me who could kind of tell me what to look for, and across the campus and other disciplines all together, right? Where I just need to get away from my environment sometimes, recharge, refresh. I sought counseling because I'm stressed out, right? And it can be really depressing sometimes. A lot of times people feel that getting counseling is an admission of weakness, but in reality, it's a source of strength, right? Because you're seeking out a partner who's going to help you identify strategies to navigate a really difficult time. And because I was a student, it was free. Counseling is not free. As a student, for me, it was free. So I sought out counseling. I also focused on the future, right? So I was telling you, I was trying to figure out what's next. I was interviewing alumni. I was trying to do informational interviews. That helped me stay motivated to realize that it will end and then I will have a next step, right? And then when I talk to trainees sometimes, that are going through difficult situations with their advisors. And sometimes they had to switch labs, right? Like the advisor they had was so emotionally toxic that they were not able to move forward. And sometimes you have to put yourself in a new environment. You have to also remind yourself that you always have a choice. You always have agency, right? In where you are. And the ability for you to get to the next step, it all lays on you. And that's the scary aspect of doing a PhD program in STEM. It's very entrepreneurial. Everything is dependent on you, right? But you do have some social safety nets in your deans, in your advisors, in your colleagues in the laboratory or around you, your friend group, right? Or the administration that's in your university. Definitely remind yourself that your mental wellness is just important as your physical wellness. And so protect that, identify ways to maintain that as you go through that very stressful process. I forgot the second part of your question. Oh, how do I manage work and life now? Okay, so I'm 47. I have two kids. I have a wonderful bonus daughter. She's 12. She's going through middle school, and I have a lovely son. He's 5. He's about to start kindergarten. I have a husband. We have a house. I have a couple businesses on the side when I'm not wearing my NSF hat and not on government time. And then I have a full-time job. Like being a program officer is a full-time job. Okay, so I have a number of mechanisms to keep myself organized. I have a planner. I plan the year, right? Because there's things happening throughout the year. So there's like important dates. I put that together in January. I have a monthly planner so I can keep everybody's activities at a 100-foot view for myself because I need to know when my son has swim class on Wednesday and Thursday. My daughter has flute lessons on Friday, and then he has Lego practice on Tuesday. So someone's got to get these kids somewhere, right? So my husband and I, we take turns either picking up or dropping off. We coordinate a lot. I have a partner that helps a lot. And I'm very organized with my time. And so I use my calendar to organize when am I going to do work? When do I have meetings? And I learned that through consulting. I had to learn Outlook and how to use Outlook to block out periods of time to do my work and also block out times for when I actually have to meet with people. So I have to be very clear about I need to get my work done during work hours. And then like early, I have to like maybe throw some laundry in the early morning so we can have towels for the house or we can figure out who's making dinner in the evening. It's an ongoing endeavor, and you have to be flexible and you have to be willing to move things around if possible. And you need to know when things are coming in advance. So that's how I make it work. And I'm not even perfect at it. It's still, stuff still gets through the cracks, but we're doing okay. We're getting through it. We're going through it. I also have great colleagues at work and we work together, and I'm the kind of person who has to talk out my feelings, or talk out my thoughts, and I have colleagues at work that help me do that. Um, and I also have to give myself a lot of grace and also give my colleagues and my children and my husband grace and when everything doesn't go as planned, roll with it. Don't get caught up in it. So that's what works. The grace is one that works the most.
Thank you for sharing that. And this last question, there's a couple of different questions on this. One is in the Q&A. So what is the best way to network in the field? And then a question that came in beforehand is, how important do you think it is to build relationships with professors, with staff on campus? I would even add to that within the Leadership Alliance if students are doing research now. So what are your thoughts and or suggestions in regards to how to be effective at networking and how important that is as a budding scientist?
Well, you have to know yourself I know that I am an extrovert, which means that I get energy from talking to other people. But there are folks that are introverts where talking to other people sucks away their energy, right? So you need to identify who you are and what's going to work for you, right? So if you're an introvert, if you're shy, and even as an extrovert, I am shy, right? It helps to have, if you're at a function, this is what I learned as a fellow, go with another person. Think about why you're going to a function, who you're trying to meet, and then check in, right? So you're not going to something alone. If you're trying to reach out to somebody on email, usually investigators who want to be good mentors, who are good mentors, they love to hear from people who are aspiring scientists, right? So don't be shy to email folks. And the more well-known they are, the more emails they receive. So if they don't email you back, send another one maybe a couple of weeks later to follow up. Don't think that because they didn't reply to you, they don't want to talk to you, right? Leverage your alumni foundations. Go to your alumni foundations. There's so many people who went to your university or your institution that had great experiences, that have so much that they want to give back to the people that are currently there. So think about the fact that there are people out there that really want to help someone like you. They just need a way to know who you are. So you can work with your alumni foundations to meet with alumni. When it comes to networking with administrators, faculty within the Leadership Alliance, a lot of my faculty teachers, like in chemistry, they wrote my letters of recommendation so that I can go to Duke University, so that I can go to Johns Hopkins, right? And that meant that I was in class asking questions. And sometimes I would ask questions because I didn't want to fall asleep. Like, I'm like, oh, this is really great, but I'm sleepy because I went to bed at like 3 a.m. the night before, right? And so I would ask questions in class to help me stay awake. And also because sometimes I was really interested. And so then that faculty member remembered me. You're like, oh, you're the nosy lady in class that kept on asking all these questions. Why don't you come to my office hours? And then I would come to office hours and I would learn more about what I was supposed to learn. But then I would also ask, what's going on in your lab, or what you guys doing? Or could you write this letter of recommendation for me? Because I want to go and do research somewhere else. And so it's really important because a lot of times people don't understand that your relationships are what help you navigate the ambiguous space when you're trying to transition along the career path, right? And the people that you reach out to are the people that are going to be giving you that insight. But if you don't reach out to anybody, then you're not going to get the insight. And you can try AI, and that's helpful. But at the end of the day, you're going to need someone to also vouch for you and write on your behalf. So I would say that relationships are so essential, and being able to identify at least 3 mentors in different areas that can help you either enter a field, to understand what are the rules of a given field, to be able to help you meet other people, or to be that psychological safe space where you can go and you can just say, oh, this is horrible what's happening to me. They can just be there and you feel safe with that person. There's so many folks in that web of mentorship that you should be building for yourself to help you have those relationships. With Leadership Alliance, we have a whole doctoral scholar network. Did you send your sash? Okay, I've got the sash. So we have a whole network of people happy to give back, offer advice, and let people know about our path. Um, Whenever you reach out to somebody, never ask for a job. Never ask for a job. Never ask for a job. But ask for information all day. And then all of a sudden you're like getting links, you're getting information for jobs and things like that. And so I would definitely reach out to folks on Leadership Alliance. I'm often, I get a lot of inquiries on LinkedIn. People send me a message on LinkedIn. I respond, right? you never really know how much people are on the other end of emails, like people are on the other end of LinkedIn links. Just don't be shy. Put yourself out there, and you'll find that a lot will happen in your way.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I would just add as well, for the students that are part of the summer research program, I mean, this is one of the ways, that the Leadership Alliance is outreaching and connecting with you all. So you should continue to follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we are on Instagram, all the platforms. You should continue to check our website for different programs, different opportunities. We were just awarded a grant actually to host a mentoring conference through the NSF. So we will be doing that at Johns Hopkins sometime in the fall. So if you're in that area, check that out. But there are lots of ways that you can stay connected, find out about opportunities, and leverage this amazing network of scientists, scholars, amazing academic institutions. So we hope you all enjoyed the session for today. Dr. Indorf is going to be posting Dr. Whitley's LinkedIn in our Google Classroom. We will share all the amazing links to these opportunities, funding opportunities that Dr. Whitley has shared with us. And otherwise, I think we're going to wrap, but is there anything else, Dr. Whitley, parting words that you'd like to give to our audience today?
Thank you again for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share my story. I do hope that you found something in this for yourself, that it will help either lift your spirits to keep pushing and moving forward, and just doing your very best to chase your passion. I think once you chase your passion and your curiosity, you can never go wrong. So thank you again for inviting me. It's been a really real honor.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone on today. And we will see you all again on Wednesday for our next workshop. Thank you.